Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the art of effective prospect nurturing, brought to you by Staymates. My name is Chris Raposo. I am the AVP of Marketing Strategy here at Staymates. If you missed our live EduWeb Masterclass in Portland, Maine, you're in luck. Lisa Starkey-Wood, who led a 3-hour workshop at the conference, will share some of the actionable strategies she presented at the conference last month. In the next hour, she'll cover how to map the student journey, choose the right tools and channels, and use campaign data to drive enrollment. We're recording this session today, so after the presentation, we will send you a copy of the recording as well as the slides. We'll also host a live Q&A at the end, so please feel free to share and ask your questions in the chat, and we will answer them at the end of this presentation. And with that, Lisa, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you all for joining us today. Prior to joining Staymates, my background was as a director of admissions and marketing in higher education. So this is one of my most favorite topics. So I'm going to just go ahead and get started because we've got a lot of pro tips and advice for you in this slide deck today that I hope you find helpful. We will start with a discussion about taking the journey of your prospective students and why we really recommend doing that. Go over the art of prospect nurturing and hopefully leave you with some pro tips that help you build out your prospect nurturing communication plan. And as I go through, I'm going to show a couple of client case studies and examples, and I'm going to leave you with one full case study at the end of our time together before we get into questions. So to start off with, I always like to ask, what is the best way to improve your prospective student experience? And my response to that is to go ahead and take the journey of your prospective students yourself. So as part of all of our digital marketing campaign scopes of work, we actually do something that we call mystery shopping and user journeys. And what we do there is we actually go in through Google, look at your homepage, fill out the RFI form on your website, and take that journey ourselves to see what prospective students are seeing as part of that journey. And over on the left-hand side of the screen here, I have some issues that we've uncovered from doing this. I'm not going to read all of them to you, but some major ones where we discovered that the RFI form for one of our clients wasn't working in mobile. It could not be submitted for a couple of months with the agency that they were using prior to Staymates. We also found that day zero inquiry texts weren't sending that clients thought were. We found that there's no thank you page, no immediate thank you email, no nurture communication plan if a thank you email is initially received, and several other examples that we can talk about later on as you have questions or have more discussion at the end. But these are the reasons why we've discovered that mystery shopping is really such an important part of your prospect nurture plan. So what I recommend is taking a walk in the virtual shoes of your prospective students yourself. And at the EduWeb session, we actually did this because we had a bit more time together than we have together today. But we talked about identifying your persona, thinking about what type of prospective student you wanted to take the journey of. I recommend doing this for several different types of prospective students as part of your communication nurture plan, but thinking about what would I be thinking of if I'm sure of my major, if I'm a working professional, if I'm a first-year student versus a transfer student, and what keywords I might be typing into Google to ultimately end up on your website or through your homepage searching for specific information on your website. So at the EduWeb session, we actually identified a persona and went through this process ourselves. But for today, I'm just going to walk through our recommendations for what we recommend doing, and then you can do it on your own after our session today. So the first step is really taking that journey from Google yourself, typing in the keywords that you think prospective students might be searching for if they know their major, if they're worried about credits transferring, if they're worried about affordability, and seeing what search results come up. And then thinking, okay, what really surprises me about where I'm showing in these search rankings? Who's outranking me based on their organic content? What are they saying that I'm not saying on my program pages that might help me improve my search results? Looking at what doesn't surprise you. This gives you a really good chance to see who's outranking you in terms of their organic content, but also who's paying more to outrank you in those sponsored search results, and thinking about what can you do to improve your search results if you put a little bit more budget towards some search campaigns, or if you don't have a little bit more budget to put towards those, how you can change the content and update the content on your website to improve those rankings. This is a really helpful tool that I like to make sure I tell all of our clients about. It's called Google Search Location Changer. And what you see here on the screen is it's a really quick Chrome extension that you can download for free. It takes about 2 minutes to download it onto your computer, and you can change the location that you are searching from with this tool. So I like to use this to show our clients, here's what you're looking like in search results in your primary markets, your secondary markets, maybe markets that you're trying to expand into and really get a stronger hold on a tertiary market and increase your students who are ultimately applying and enrolling from those markets, and understanding your competition better, and not just in your own backyard, but within a 2-hour radius, or, you know, in a market that you're trying to really increase enrollments from. The next thing we like to encourage everybody to do is actually take the journey from your homepage. It may sound silly, but pull up your homepage, see if the information that you're looking for is right there in front of you, or if you can easily navigate to the page that has the information that you're looking for. One thing that happened at the EduWeb session is we typed in business programs for one of the attendees, and it was actually a bunch of news releases that came up rather than the program page. So how can you change things around and prioritize the things that are showing in your site search results to show that program page that most likely people searching for business programs are hoping to see, rather than those news releases? So again, what updates could be made to improve the visitor experience as you're taking that journey and walking through it in their shoes? And this is my most favorite part: submit the RFI form yourself. So first of all, was your RFI form easy to find as you're taking the journey of that prospective student? We had people in our masterclass who were actually surprised that they couldn't find it very easily from their homepage, or even typing it into the search on their website. And we found this with a couple of clients as we do mystery shopping for them, having difficulty finding an RFI form, or perhaps not even having an RFI form on their website. So that's the first step. Is it easy to find? Is it easy for students to complete? And we know there is a balance between having enough information to create that record in your CRM and getting them on your communication plan, and also not overwhelming them with the number of fields that you're asking them to complete. So where is that balance? And we talked about in the EduWeb session, getting together marketing, IT, and admissions in the same room and having that discussion so you can really optimize your RFI form to have the fields you need, but not be overwhelming to the prospective student, and really enhance that experience. Was there a thank you page when you hit submit? Was it obvious that the form was submitted? Sometimes we see really small text just come up within the same screen saying thank you, and it's not really clear if my form was submitted. Am I going to hear from you? Sometimes there's not really helpful next steps on that thank you page, and we can help you by showing some examples of what you might want to consider including. Did you receive an immediate thank you message within a day or within that day that you filled out the RFI form? And again, always thinking about, as you're walking through this process, what changes could you make to enhance the overall experience of your prospective students? So those are some fun activities for you to do some homework after this session and complete. And now we're going to walk through the art of prospect nurturing, where we'll leave you with some tips, walk through some examples of what we're talking about here for some best practices, from really getting that campaign lead or inquiry all the way to enrolled student today. So our first pro tip, and I really can't emphasize this enough, is day zero matters. Research shows that 75% of students expect a response from us within 24 hours. And it also shows that it doesn't really matter what age group your prospective students are in, whether it's your more traditional first-year student, transfer student, adult students. We as adults are really not any more patient than a 17-year-old when you really think about it. Think about when you submit a password request, when you've forgotten your password and you're sitting there refresh, waiting for that information. When a student submits an RFI form, they're really expecting an immediacy in a response like we are when we're doing that password reset submission. So my advice here is strike while the iron is hot. A couple of people in our EduWeb session said, well, it takes, at least a full day for the record to get into our CRM. So if you don't have the ability to send an immediate day zero email, the thank you page is really even more important. But really, whether you're sending the day zero email or it's day one, the thank you page is a really great spot where you can jump on that interest while the student is right in front of you on their website, on your campaign landing page, and saying more than just thank you. Taking this opportunity to really use some exciting language, congratulating them, you've taken the first step, talking to them about how you'll be in touch soon with more information, but then driving them to look at other things that are exciting and engaging. If you've got great YouTube shorts, link to your YouTube shorts. If you've got a really great organic social plan where you've got some engaging content on Instagram and Facebook and things like that, directing them there. And then telling them those key next steps that you want them to take, the things that are top of mind for them. So come see for yourself. This is an example of a thank you page that we've created in partnership with the University of Southern Maine for their digital campaigns. And you can see we're really driving students to take that next step, sign up for a visit, explore all we have to offer, talking about academic programs, all the student clubs and orgs, ways to get involved. Oh, and by the way, if you're ready, go ahead and complete your application today. So we don't want apply to be the only next step we're giving students. Chances are, if they're filling out the RFI form, they're not quite ready to make that journey. If they are, you want to make it easy for them to find. But if they aren't, you want to provide these other things for them to do and engage in while they're making that decision of whether to apply or not. So really including high value customized links. USM has a different page for transfers where we talk about transfer credit evaluations and ease of transferring credits and how there's a specific transfer counselor who's your go-to person. Their graduate programs have similar links that are really more geared toward graduate students. So making sure that it's high value, relevant content on the thank you page whenever possible is really important. Day zero RFI form thank you emails are really a must-have if it's possible in your CRM. A lot of your form builders, if you can't get the record over to your CRM, a lot of those form builder tools have the ability to send an email. It might not be able to have dynamic content like these examples show if it's coming out of your form tool, but it's at least getting in touch with them right away, and you can include some important links and next steps in that email. It's even better if you can have personalized dynamic content. So again, this is an example from University of Southern Maine. If you filled out that RFI form for undergraduate students and you saw that thank you page that I just showed on the prior screen, this is the thank you email that you're going to get, connecting you to your admissions counselor right away. So you know I've got my person, he's there for anything I need, really getting you excited about campus, the different academic options available, all the ways you can get involved. And then we've got some dynamic content here where the third paragraph is actually linking to wherever the student's coming from and talking about how USM works really hard to make it an affordable option for students from Maine because you're getting in-state tuition. If you're from New England, this paragraph is going to reference some discount programs they have for tuition from those states. And then if you're from out of state, it talks about because you're a student, from New York, we've got these great scholarships. So really identifying that we know who you are, we're here, and we're working towards making this a great option for you. And then over on the right-hand side, it is the thank you email for graduate students who have submitted the RFI form. So linking them again to their admissions counselor, talking about those graduate programs, graduate specific scholarships, financial aid, more about career outcomes. So really customizing that content so it's relevant and exciting information for your different target audiences, if you can, in that day zero email. So you're making a connection right from the start. Our second pro tip map the journey by funnel stage. So here, this slide is talking about the different audiences that you really want to think about building out your communication and nurture plan for each bucket here shown on this slide. So from search, the lists of students that you're getting from different sources, people who are actually filling out your RFI form, your applicants, your accepted students, your deposited students. You really don't want to forget about any of these audiences as you're mapping out your comm plan. And over on the right-hand side, it's really important that we don't forget about key influencers like families, like guidance counselors, and like your community college counselors. So really having specific outreach and planned communication to each of those audiences. And in addition to making sure that you've got your communication plan mapped out for each of these audiences, or each of these buckets, you also want to make sure that you're thinking about the audiences within each bucket. So within your inquiries and your accepted students and your applied students, you've got different messaging for first year, transfer, adult learners, because the types of information and questions that they have are so different. So you're really wanting to create customized messaging based on who they are and what we know they are worried about and wanting to know more about. And another tip here that I always like to include, we see a lot of colleges and universities that have really great application push emails where you're really pushing those upcoming deadlines for applications or enrollment, but needing to have a really good balance of fit emails where you're nurturing the prospect and the applicant and the accepted student in addition to those deadline pushes. And I'm going to show you some great examples of how we can do that when we get into the case study at the end of our time together today. So to build a strong inquiry nurture track, there's really two steps. The first is you want to make sure your communication begins as soon as the inquiry is received. So having that personalized relevant message on your thank you page, having that day zero email that goes out as soon as the information is received from them, but then having this regular timed outreach throughout the cycle. That's a combination of driving them to the next steps, but really telling them why choose your institution over another, what makes you special, what's going to be different about the experience there versus another college down the road or 2 hours away, with really relevant messaging for them. Our third pro tip is space out and vary those touch points. So this is an example of an inquiry track that I have used in a prior life of mine. And so what you're seeing in the middle with those arrows, multicolor arrows, kind of it's a direct mail plan where you're sending information out in the mail, making sure that students and families are seeing it. I know some people question, is direct mail still needed? And I do think it is. You probably don't need to have this many touch points if you have a limited budget, but I do think getting something in the mail, having it get in front of families, which you might not be doing with your emails and your texts and your phone calls, is really important. So having those touch points throughout the cycle, and then having your emails and texts kind of offset when you're hitting them with those postcards and having it be information and content that's aligned and personalized, and having those time drops where you're saying, okay, we've got an open house coming up in October. Let's plan to have the open house invite send 6 weeks out, and then have a couple of emails that accompany that as well. So really building up your brand affinity, letting them know what's special about your school over competitors through mail, email, and a couple of text messages at key points for the inquiry, more right up in the front, just letting them know you've received their inquiry and you're going to be, following up, look for this in the mail, trying to get them excited about what to look for and what to do next in those limited text messages as part of your inquiry plan. So for messaging here, again, we want to be building brand awareness, building up that interest. If you've got some intro and overview videos, it's really great to have student-centric content. So it's great to have, videos of faculty or a nice message from the director or dean of admissions, but also getting current student content in front of prospective students is so important because it's just highly valued, highly trusted to see a student talking about their experience. So establishing connection, really highlighting any areas of interest that you can as part of your inquiry messaging. We know the amount of information you know about an inquiry is limited. So highlighting things like we know where you're from, here's scholarships that apply, we know your program of interest if we know that at that point, here's more information about that, and really personalizing those next steps like visit us, we'd love to see you at open house, meet us on the road, we're coming to your high school during fall visits, or we're going to be at this national fair in your neck of the woods, and inviting them to follow those social media channels with that student-centric content and pushing them to apply. And your outreach methods here, like we talked about, email, direct mail, but an occasional limited phone call and text message just to make sure you're reaching them across all channels, because we know some people aren't answering their phone calls, some people aren't checking their email. So having that nice approach where you've got a little bit of everything to ensure you're reaching your students is really important. And having something similar for an applicant track. Here, it's really important to confirm you've received the application, just like it is with the R5 form, probably even more important here because I've taken all the time to submit my application. So making sure that we're confirming that, making sure that you've got communication for students who start their application but don't submit it is really important too. Some messaging like, oh, hey, we're so excited to see you started your application. Take the next steps and complete it today. And then having those regular timed outreach for applicants where you're talking about, we're still maybe missing your transcript. We still need more information from you. I found really great success in including guidance counselor outreach at this stage of the funnel. We used to do guidance counselor call mornings where like everybody would take 10 applicant files and call the guidance counselors and request transcripts. For the students that had applied, and it was amazing the number of transcripts that would come in those days. So that's a really good tip. But trying to drive application completion with your messaging here while continuing to really talk about what makes your institution so special and what's different about the experience they would have there versus anywhere else. And again, for your messaging, your calls to action, and your outreach, this is really where you can personalize your outreach more than ever before because we've got more information about the students from them taking the time to complete the application, including the guidance counselor outreach, trying to set up visits, getting in the schools to meet with these students wherever possible, talking about special scholarship opportunities that might be available because they're from a certain area, or, you know, because they're a nursing major, things like that. And then really trying to start building that connection with current students is important at this point. So if you can have some of your student ambassadors doing outreach and being a part of that, that's really important at this stage of the funnel. And obviously your calls to action here, complete your application like we talked about on the prior screen, filing your FAFSA, really trying to get them on campus because we know students who come and visit your institution are much more likely to ultimately complete their application, submit all the documents, and ultimately enroll. And again, starting to really include guidance counselors and parent and family outreach at this stage of the funnel is really important. And I just wanted to mention that a multi-channel approach to your outreach is just as important as the content and timing of your messages. So having your messaging go across all channels, like I talked about, making sure you're incorporating email, text, direct mail, and phone calls, because we know all students aren't engaging with all those types of communication, but also recognizing that if you ask a student for their preferred method of communication and they say email, really leaning on that more than the other channels and having that ability to say, you know, don't text this person, or this person prefers email in your CRM is really important, so that you're paying attention to those things that they've shared with us like that. Having an organic social media plan where you've got, again, some really great student-centric content, some engaging things happening there. If we're driving students to follow you in all of our communications, we really want to make sure you've got some engaging content there. And then your paid ads, your campaign strategy there, and then list retargeting for these people that are within those buckets on that prior slide I showed a few slides ago, your inquiries, your applicants, your accepted students. How can we tie retargeting messages to them into our overall campaign strategy? And I'll talk a little bit about one way that we've done that with one of our clients in a couple of slides. Pro tip number 4, make it feel personal. We've already talked about this a lot in talking about that dynamic relevant content, but just touching on it a little bit more and showing some examples here. So recent data shows 9 out of 10 students agree receiving relevant content from a college or university influences their decisions. So great news. If we're giving them relevant content, it's affecting and impacting their decision. Bad news, only 15% of the students surveyed in this particular survey said, yes, the information I'm receiving is actually relevant for me. So as we're working with clients to build out their communication plans, I'm always thinking about how can we improve this message? How can we make it more relevant for students so it's something that they're engaging with and excited about? And really relevant audience-specific messaging needs to start with your paid ad and campaign landing page strategy. So this is one example that I'm going to just walk you quickly through from our client Owens Community College. They received a grant to try to increase the number of students within their markets who were 25 plus with college credentials. They did a deep dive research project and really identified that that was an area that the Toledo, Ohio market needed to improve on. So they received a grant and they came to us and they said, how can you help us, really serve this important audience within our key demographics? So we worked with them to create ads and a campaign landing page and a targeting strategy really specific to adult learners, where we're speaking directly to adult learners, obviously very different messaging than your first year students or even your transfer students, where we're aligning the messaging with things like their goals, wanting to improve their career, launching their future, doing better for themselves and their families. Adult learners are always worried about how long is it going to take me to complete this program? Transfer students often have that worry as well. So the timeline, earning an advanced certificate in just 12 months, getting that out there in front of them, appealing to their emotions and things like perhaps being stuck in their career, ready for the next step. And then we know adult learners are often worried about how flexible is this? Is this going to be able to fit in with my career, my family, my, everything else that I have going on in my life? So you can see here an example on the right-hand side of your screen, an ad that we worked on. This is just one of many for their adult learner campaign. And that ad led to a campaign landing page that also had very specific, relevant, tailored content for adult learners. So showing them that it's possible, talking about how it's achievable, affordable, flexible, talking about if you make this investment in you, here's some of the outcomes you can expect to receive, having some adult learner specific student testimonials. So it's students that they can see themselves in, and then also making that next step easy and clear to take with the RFI form submission up here at the top of the page. So we worked with them in partnership to have this really targeted strategy, really targeted messaging, and they also worked really hard internally. Their outreach specialists really made sure that students who completed the RFI form were getting immediate follow-up, and overall results for the time that the campaign was in market. They saw a 74% increase in their non-traditional enrolled students for their spring start of 2025 versus 2024. So just an example of having that really strong messaging in your digital ad strategy and your campaign landing page, making sure that the outreach is happening once the lead comes through to your admissions office. You can see really strong results by making sure that they've got that information that they're seeking right away. And I really want to push a little bit more on why a campaign landing page that is conversion focused is so important, just with another example. So another example from Owens, we launched a visiting student campaign with them And this is over on the right-hand side of your screen. We used the page that already existed on their website for the campaign when we launched it in 2023 because it needed to get in market really fast. There wasn't the budget for a separate campaign landing page, so we used this page versus over on the left-hand side. The next year that we ran the campaign, we had a campaign-specific campaign landing page with really specific content on why would you want to be a visiting student at Owens, really selling you on the experience, saving the money, saving time, getting your credits out of the way, having more of that really specific content for this target audience and that clear next step of filling out that RFI form. And another amazing result for Owens from a conversion-focused campaign where they saw a 163% increase in conversions from Meta and a 13% increase in enrolled students, which we love to see increases in conversions, but we love even more to see this number climbing and getting higher for our clients that we work with. So a 13% increase year over year, which was pretty incredible for them. So for your conversion-focused campaign landing pages, these are the things that you really want to be doing to make sure that they are conversion-focused, that messaging tailored to your target audience. Really important because that's what they want to see, but also aligning the copy on your campaign landing page with the ads that are in market. It's going to help the performance of your campaigns. You're going to appear higher in search results. Google likes that. So you're keeping Google happy, you're keeping your target audience happy, and your ads and campaigns are performing better overall. So you're keeping your internal stakeholders happy as well. It should include a request for information if and whenever possible. Also aligning it with your enrollment deadlines. So as you've got those application push emails and enrollment push emails going out, if you've got a way to align that deadline on your campaign landing page with a countdown or a pop-up or something like that, we've seen really great results driving conversions during those key times of year by including that in our strategy. And then optimize, optimize, optimize. Don't just set your campaign landing page and forget it. Look at how your campaigns are performing. Look at the keywords that people are searching for and optimize your campaign landing page to include those as search behavior changes throughout the course of your campaign, including a thank you page with those next steps like I showed, and then having that immediate follow-up whenever possible. So relevant content in your digital ad and campaign landing page strategy has big wins, but relevant content in your overall nurture communication plan once you receive those RFI form completions also has really big wins. So focusing on, again, having those segmented audiences so that you can really answer the specific questions and concerns that we know each audience has, referencing their interests whenever possible. If we're asking students what program they're interested in and want to receive more information on, we want to make sure we're sending more information about that program to students. So having program-specific outreach as part of your communication, connecting them to that admissions counselor or outreach specialist as soon as possible in the process so they've got that person. The more people are connected to their admissions counselor or a coach from athletics or somebody in financial aid earlier in the process, the more likely they are to ultimately enroll at your institution. And then again, including dynamic content about all of these types of information whenever and wherever possible in your outreach plan. These are just some examples of personalized dynamic content emails. So you're looking at an email on the Indian Hills Community College email inquiry track that we've worked on them together and launched for them. And it's an email really selling them on the location of Indian Hills. But you will notice the only thing that's different is here, this third paragraph. If you're within 2 hours of campus, we know you're more likely to visit Indian Hills just looking at their data. So we're pushing scheduling a campus tour, really wanting them to come on campus, versus we know people outside of that 2-hour radius, in particular for them, are less likely and able to get to campus. So promoting that virtual tour as a key next step instead for them. We know getting them to campus, they're going to have a much higher likelihood of ultimately enrolling at your institution. But if only 5% of students who are outside of that 2-hour radius report that they're able to get to campus, during the inquiry process, then really promoting the next best thing as the virtual tour to showcase all that Indian Hills has to offer. And then again, this is just the inquiry email that we looked at for University of Southern Maine earlier, just putting that in here because it's really important to connect them to their admissions counselor or that key person in the process as early as possible. So wanting you to have that example as we talk about relevant personalized content here as well. And then making sure, again, that if we do have their program information, we have some specific program related content that's going out to them. So for Indian Hills, all students start with a thank you for your inquiry message, and then they branch off into these really specific program messages where we've got outcomes, expected salary, job placement rates, how quickly you'll get your degree, pushing those next steps like visit and apply across the board. But if we don't have your program, if you haven't given that information, you just skip this email and go right down to the third email on the track, which is that location email that you just saw. And then for our fifth pro tip, keep engagement and excitement high at all levels of your comp plan. So really showing them their fit, helping them make connections, get engaged, getting them engaged with current students, but also with each other, talking about, special scholarships, making it really specialized and unique for them, showcasing those student stories. And I've got an example that I'm going to show you in this section of how we showcase the student story for University of Southern Maine, reinforcing those campus-wide connections. So thinking about who are those other areas on campus that are really going to help students ultimately make the decision to enroll. For our deposited student campaign at an institution that I worked at prior to Stamats, we actually had a message in our yield student email plan from different areas on campus, like the director of student activities talking about all the ways to get involved, like the director of campus safety talking about all he does to keep campus safe, like your director of financial aid talking about all she's going to do to help make sure that getting financial aid is a really smooth and easier process than it would be without them helping you in that office, and really illustrating fit in addition to talking about it, and always inciting that action of visit, apply, connect, engage with other students, engage with our social media channels, etc. So this is an example of a deposit push retargeting strategy that we worked on in partnership with University of Southern Maine. We were retargeting students within their accepted pool during the month of April and a bit into May, really trying to get them to realize that they were ready to become a Husky, join the Husky Pack today. It's time to make it real. And then they also had, in addition to this, a really strong yield email plan that we worked on with them, creating the content for and building out in their system, and really regular timed outreach that they focused on internally more than ever before for their accepted students. And they just told us last week that they have over an increase of 70 first-year students coming in this fall. So really great results for them, really excited for them and their newer director of marketing who started there earlier this spring and really worked to push a lot of this forward. In addition to your applicant and inquiry track, that regular time messaging, you want to have something like that for your accepted students. But instead of showing you another one of those types of slides where I talked about that regular timed outreach, I also wanted to talk about how important for accepted students it is to have a workflow for your admissions counselors to be doing that outreach. Phone calls are important. I know there can be too many of them. I've definitely worked at institutions where too many phone calls were happening and we had to cut back on them, but there is a balancing act. And I think if you can have your admissions team doing one phone call, the one that's going to have the greatest impact is the accepted student. Day zero phone call them to tell them they're accepted, get them excited. even before they get their accepted student packet in the mail, that phone call has a really huge impact. And you can say, watch your mailbox, we're sending you, some more information. That's the phone call that I've seen have the biggest bang for your buck for sure. For your admissions counselor's time. I do think there's other points where a phone call is really important, in particular for applied and accepted and deposited students. And you can see here, I'm saying around day 35, another accepted call is probably a good touch point just to touch base, pulling in the parents, getting them excited, contacting the families, but really having your admissions counselors do some high level, high touch outreach in addition to your yield email plan that's timed. Okay, they've been accepted day 10, this message is going out. Day 15, this message is going out. This type of highly personalized outreach is really important in addition to that. And for your accepted students, again, high personalization, getting them connected with other accepted students and current students to really start building that student community. I've seen faculty outreach have a huge impact at this stage. I did faculty contact projects at both institutions that I worked with prior to Staymates, and I would see yield rates that were significantly higher for students that had that faculty outreach versus others that did not for students in the accepted stage. They're really starting to picture themselves here. So thinking, oh my gosh, this could be my professor. He's awesome. He's a pro at XYZ, whatever field I'm interested in. He's out there doing research, and getting those people in front of them is so important. And your calls to action here, getting them to join the community, obviously paying your deposit, signing up for accepted student day, meeting us on the road, filing your FAFSA, all those are really important key calls to action. And again, having that multi-channel approach where we've got emails, phone calls, texts, and direct mail as part of your accepted student outreach, but also having your separate family and parent outreach plan this is the stage that it is the most important to be talking to the family and parent at, because they're starting to have all those next questions of what do I do next, getting a little overwhelmed about the FAFSA and paying the bill that's going to be coming up and being emailed or mailed, and getting those course selections and things done. So starting to think of all of that as they're picturing themselves there and ultimately hopefully enrolling at your institution. That's important at the accepted and the deposited stage. So a lot of the same types of thing here, connecting them with other offices across campus like Res Life, Student Success, advising, student to student connection, all those things to get excited about as you make the decision to ultimately enroll and attend your institution. Really important to have family and parent outreach at both of those stages. So this is that example that I talked about, showcasing student voice. So this is the first email on University of Southern Maine's yield email communication plan. And instead of, someone at the institution talking about the wonderful experience that you will have there, which is also very important, we started the track with Ashlyn, who is a student ambassador for University of Southern Maine, talking about the awesome experience that she had at Maine. So again, talking about the amazing people she met, the learning experiences that she's had there, really showcasing her voice. And again, showcasing fit. So talking about the student groups and activities and athletics and things that you can be involved in, but also showcasing that with images, with student testimonial quotes and links to videos of students talking about all the ways that they can get involved in campus. Really important here. And all the stages, but in particular, really important for accepted students. And then making those campus-wide connections. So University of Southern Maine just made a really big investment in their career and employment hub. So showcasing that here, showing some outcomes, all these great internships and opportunities that students who attend there have. But again, also customizing your student testimonial stories to be about the relevant topic within that email, and showcasing that student voice throughout the yield communication plan is really important, in a way that we tied to and engaged with their YouTube shorts that University of Southern Maine had worked really hard on. So really quickly, before we open it up for questions, I just want to walk through one more case study. Fox Valley Technical College also received a grant like Owens did but their grant was to communicate and re-engage students who had some college but no college credential. It was a combination of stop outs from their institution, but also a purchase list that they had. And so they came to us and they said, here's our budget. What's the best plan? Should we do some, digital ads? Should we do list retargeting? And we took a look at their budget and the messaging that needed to happen. And we said, the most important thing you can do, honestly, because you don't have enough money to be competitive in digital advertisements for the length of your campaign, and you really need to nurture these people. You don't have enough to run the campaigns and have a nurture plan. So you've got to have a nurture plan really as your top priority here for the budget that you have. So we worked with them to do a 3-tiered multi-channel approach campaign where they had emails, direct mail, and text messages. And what you're looking at here is the timing of their email campaign. So they wanted to see increases in enrollment for their January, June, and August start with a limited budget. So we took a look and said, okay, you have enough money to probably have your campaign launch in October and run through your August start. So we did a combination of brand emails, which you can see are the blue dots on this slide, kind of timed throughout the cycle, and then wanting to have a regular cadence of communication leading up to each start, where we did a 5-week and 3-week email countdown. And I'll show you examples of the emails. These were the brand emails, which were really focused more on just building the overall brand awareness of Fox Valley, all that they had to offer. We did the Fox Valley Technical College difference in each of the emails and changed the stat out. Those were also in the application push emails, but again, showing that experience, the access to faculty, debt-free education, outcomes in terms of student satisfaction and how many graduates were employed within 6 months of graduation. Some really great data there. And then their application push emails, which were a little bit shorter, a little bit more to the point, pushing those application deadlines. If you're ready, apply today. Again, 5 and 3 weeks out from each semester start. And then we also had 3 direct mail drops that we tried to kind of evenly space out across the length of the campaign. And those postcards aligned with the email messaging that students are receiving. So when you see these postcards, it's starting to really build a brand awareness and an affinity for Fox Valley Technical College. You know who they are. You're remembering seeing some of these similar images and messaging in your inbox. And then the text message campaign, which we really use to help create a sense of urgency leading up to those deadlines and having these be at the 4 and the 2 week mark. So you're getting that 5 and 3 week email. If you haven't seen that, hopefully you're seeing the 4 and the 2 week countdown text. And the results that they saw for the overall campaign during the 10 months that they were in market, they saw 278 applications and 77 enrolled students from essentially a list of purchase names. So not even really people who had inquired and were interested in Fox Valley, and a combination of their stop out students, by having the combination of a nurture plan plus the application push email really producing meaningful results for them. So one case study to leave you with during our time together today. And then I just want to recap. So for your best practice, again, it's that day 0 matters, map the journey by funnel stage, space out and vary touch points with a multi-channel approach. It really matters. Make it feel personal and keep building that excitement over time. So that is our presentation for today. I hope that leaves you with some great pro tips and some great exercises to take back with you and do some homework walking through the student journey for your prospective students. What questions do you all have for us today?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Great presentation and very insightful. So we have a question here from Jen Wells. Does expecting a response include autoresponder confirmation, or does that mean one-to-one personal outreach?
I I would say it depends on what the auto response says. So if you've got an auto response that really makes it clear that the message is received or the inquiry is received, kind of goes over some key next steps, then it's probably doing a decent job. But if it's just kind of, yes, we've received your inquiry and not really driving them to the next steps, it's best to have that additional communication that really takes them to those specific places on your website to get them more engaged and more excited while they're there and asking for more information.
Very good, very good. Another question here. You talked about incorporating direct mail into the mix. What's a good balance between direct mail and digital outreach, and what key elements should be included in high impact direct mail pieces?
I think it's nice to have a couple of direct mail pieces as a part of each stage in your communication plan. So a couple of direct mail touch points for inquiries. I have found success in having the inquiry pieces be postcards just because they're seeing the information. If they're not opening that envelope, they're still seeing it, the family's seeing it. We have seen some colleges and universities that try to cram all the information that you would have in a view book on a postcard, and I would caution you not to do that. I would have a couple of key messages like student activities, affordability, scholarships, things like that, that are kind of just one-off messages on your inquiry plan. And then I think on your accepted student track, it's really nice to have some direct mail pieces also where you're obviously sending the acceptance package, but a nice invite to accepted student day. I used to do like a little note card from our president at Hartwick for accepted student families, kind of welcoming them to the Hartwick community. And I would also say a handwritten note card after an in-person visit is a really nice touch, whether it's from the admissions counselor that the student met with or the tour guide, the student ambassador giving the tour. I've seen that have a pretty high impact as well.
Yeah, that reminds me. I actually have a prop here. I received a direct mail piece from the University of Florida all these years ago. It was a magnet that said, "The Gator Nation is everywhere." It brought awareness to the University of Florida for me, and I ultimately enrolled. So don't sleep on direct mail.
And you still have
So
it today, Chris. You
still
still have
have
it
it.
today.
Yeah, yeah. It's a magnet. You have it on the you have it on the fridge. It doesn't go anywhere.
Mhm.
It's a good reminder. So gotta be a little bit creative with it, but goes a long way. Another question, when institutions send thank you emails after an RFI form completion, some only use generic templates for all audiences. If higher ed folks want to personalize by student type, first year transfer, or adult learners, where should they start without overwhelming their team?
So I would say if you don't have the ability, first of all, to have that thank you message be really personalized by audience, having relevant links that are exciting for all types of students, like going to your scholarships page that might talk about the different scholarships for each of those audiences, things like career outcomes, satisfaction rates, all levels of different types of students are going to be interested in that type of information. But I think obviously the more personalized you can be, the better. One tool that we find works really well is Unbounce, and that's actually where we manage our campaign landing pages, because we have the ability to have those separate campaign landing pages that separate thank you email message. But if you don't have the ability to have the thank you email, immediate thank you page be really personalized, or the thank you email be personalized, that's all the more reason to make sure that your nurture plan has really relevant content for those audiences that fouls those day zero communications, I would say.
Awesome. Very good. I have another question from the audience. Malaro asked, with a limited budget, what are the top 3 things we should focus on?
I would say focus on making it easy to find the information on your website. That's something that shouldn't cost you much at all, except maybe some hours. Look at, is your RFI form easy to find? thinking about the different times of year and what information you want to have in front of students. So when you get into the fall, making sure that once your application's launched, that apply link is really easy to find on your website. We've seen really powerful results for clients just by relocating where those CTA buttons are on a program page or on the home page. So that's something that shouldn't cost you very much. And then I would say having some type of immediate follow-up. We see a lot of institutions who are really missing out on that. I've got your attention. Let me give you some exciting information and actually follow up with you right away. So that day zero communication, if you can do anything at all to build that up, I think that's a top priority, because if they're not getting something from you, they're going somewhere else and filling out a form and getting information from that other school. And then again, just having a high personalized phone call can make all the difference, which doesn't really cost you anything besides the hours of your admission staff, who are very busy. But even just, that phone call after a visit to ask about follow-up questions, or day zero accepted phone call, really does make a difference. I used to tell my admissions counselors, if you have one good phone call a day with a prospective student, it's a good day. So those are pretty low budget things to prioritize, I think.
Yep, strike the iron while it's hot, as you mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. And talking about time investment, admissions counselors are stretched thin. Based on what you've seen work, which phone call touch points in the funnel give the biggest return on their time?
Again, the day zero phone call, I would say, post-visit phone call. We used to do phone calls too if we're going to a particular high school, calling some students from that market to say, I'm going to be at your high school, especially if it's somebody who, may have already visited. Just having that additional touch point with them really does make a difference. Accepted students and deposited students also really value a phone call from the financial aid office, calling the family, especially maybe you just sent out the financial aid package. Just having your financial aid staff help out with some of those phone calls that are being made to say, hey, you got your financial aid package. I know it's a complicated document. Let me walk you through it. What questions do you have? And again, if you've got some faculty support, having them help with phone calls, I've seen that really have a big impact as well. So helping your admissions counselors share that load. If financial aid is in the same division, let them help out with some phone calls as well.
Very good, Lisa. I think that's all the questions that we have. Thank you again for the presentation. Thank you for everyone who attended live. Like we mentioned at the beginning, there will be an email sent out tomorrow with a copy of the recording as well as the slides. Of course, if you need help with your nurture campaigns, feel free to reach out to us. Visit us on staymates.com, email us at info@staymates.com, and be sure to connect with Lisa on LinkedIn for more insightful content that she'll share there. So everybody, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.